What if the person who keeps pulling away from you is actually the one who believes you are the last person they'll ever truly connect with? Not the temporary one, not the lesson, but the end game. This is the part no one tells you about avoidant attachment. Avoidants don't walk away because they don't care. They walk away because they care too much. Emotional closeness feels like danger to their nervous system. So when the bond becomes real, they retreat. And that's exactly why you're still on their mind. If you've ever felt like they disappeared right when things started to matter, or like no matter how much distance they create, there's an invisible thread still tying you together. This video is for you. Because avoidants don't emotionally detach the way people think they do. They leave physically, but mentally and emotionally, they stay stuck on the one person who made them feel safe and exposed at the same time. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you're going to understand why they pull away, why they compare everyone else to you, and why being their end game doesn't mean they choose you. It means you change them. And once you see this clearly, you'll stop chasing answers and start reclaiming your power. Avoidant attachment isn't about being cold, heartless, or incapable of love. It's about self-protection that started long before adulthood. Most avoidants learned early on that relying on others wasn't safe or consistent, so they adapted by becoming emotionally independent. As adults, that independence looks like strength on the surface, but underneath it's a nervous system trained to shut down when intimacy gets too close. They crave connection, but the moment emotions deepen, their body reads it as a threat. This is why avoidants often seem confusing. One moment they're present, charming, and deeply engaged, and the next, distant, distracted, or suddenly needing space. It's not manipulation, it's an automatic response. Emotional closeness triggers old survival patterns, telling them they might lose control, be disappointed, or feel trapped. So instead of expressing fear or vulnerability, they withdraw. What makes avoidant attachment especially powerful is that it operates silently. Avoidants rarely talk about their emotions because they've learned to suppress them, not process them. They convince themselves they're fine, even while emotionally disconnecting. And this creates relationships filled with mixed signals, unspoken feelings, and unfinished emotional business, especially with the one person who managed to get past their emotional walls. Emotional closeness feels risky to avoidants because it threatens the control they use to feel safe. When someone gets too close, it awakens a deep fear of being overwhelmed, exposed, or losing themselves inside the relationship. Love to them isn't just warmth, it's pressure. It brings expectations, emotional responsibility, and the possibility of disappointment, all of which their nervous system learned to avoid early on. Instead of experiencing intimacy as comfort, avoidants often experience it as tension. Their body reacts before their mind can explain it. This is why they may suddenly feel irritated, restless, or emotionally numb when things are going well. The closer the bond, the louder their internal alarm becomes. Pulling away feels like relief, not rejection. What makes this fear so confusing is that avoidants still want connection. They just don't know how to stay present without feeling trapped. So they distance themselves, not because the bond is weak, but because it's strong enough to scare them. They see you as the final one because you reached a part of them no one else ever did. You didn't just connect with their personality, you connected with their nervous system. Around you, they felt seen without being judged, understood without having to explain themselves. That kind of safety is rare for someone who's spent their life staying emotionally guarded. And once they experience it, they can't unfeel it. Avoidants don't label people as the one the way others do. Instead, they mark you internally as the reference point. Every connection after you is measured against the emotional depth they felt but couldn't sustain. That's why they may leave but never truly move on. Distance doesn't erase the imprint. You remain the standard. What scares them is that choosing you would require them to change, to stay emotionally open, to face wounds they've avoided for years. So instead of committing, they retreat. Not because you weren't enough, but because you mattered more than they were ready to handle. Avoidants pull away from love when it starts asking something from them emotionally. In the beginning, connection feels exciting because there's still space, mystery, and control. But as love deepens, it brings emotional expectations, consistency, vulnerability, presence. That's when their internal alarm goes off. Not because something is wrong, but because closeness activates old fears tied to loss of independence or emotional overwhelm. Pulling away becomes their way of regulating themselves. Distance helps them breathe again. It restores the sense of control they feel they're losing. To the other person, it feels sudden and confusing. But to the avoidant, it feels necessary for survival. They often don't even realize they're doing it until the distance is already there. The painful truth is that love triggers the very wounds they never learned to heal. So instead of leaning in, they step back, hoping space will quiet feelings they don't know how to hold. Even when avoidants walk away physically, their mind doesn't detach the same way. They come back mentally because unfinished emotional connections stay active in their nervous system. You represent a version of intimacy they felt, but never resolved. And unresolved bonds don't fade. They loop. Memories surface randomly. Comparisons happen unconsciously, and moments of emotional clarity hit when they're alone, not when they're with someone new. Avoidants are experts at suppressing feelings, but suppression isn't healing. So when life slows down or when another connection lacks depth, their thoughts drift back to you, not out of nostalgia, but because you symbolize emotional safety mixed with vulnerability, something they rarely allow themselves to feel. What's important to understand is that mental return doesn't always lead to action. Thinking about you feels safer than choosing you. In their mind, they can hold the connection without risking closeness. And that's why you linger. Not because they forgot, but because they never truly processed what you meant to them. You become their emotional anchor when your presence regulates them in a way they don't fully understand. One sign is that they feel calmer around you, even when they don't talk much. Silence with you doesn't feel awkward to them, it feels grounding. They may also open up in small, unexpected moments, then quickly shut down afterward. That push and pull isn't confusion, it's vulnerability, followed by fear. Another sign is that they keep you emotionally close, even when they create distance physically. They might check your social media, ask about you indirectly, or resurface during moments of stress or change. When things in their life feel unstable, your energy becomes familiar and safe. They also compare others to you, even if they never admit it. You represent emotional steadiness without pressure. That's what makes you the anchor. You didn't demand their heart. You gave them space while still being present. And that balance is what stays with them long after the connection pauses. Knowing whether to wait or let go is one of the hardest parts of being with an avoidant. It's tempting to hold on, believing that their distance is temporary and that eventually they'll choose you. But the truth is, their patterns aren't about you. They're about their fear of closeness. Waiting without boundaries often leaves you stuck in emotional limbo, exhausted and questioning your worth. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you prioritize your own emotional health. It's about creating space for someone who can meet you where you are, consistently and without fear. Watching them struggle with intimacy doesn't have to control your life. You can acknowledge the bond you share while still choosing yourself. The key is clarity. Notice the difference between love and attachment, presence and absence. When you understand their patterns, you gain the power to decide whether to stay with awareness or step away with peace. The truth about avoidance is both challenging and freeing. They can love deeply, but their fear of intimacy often keeps them from showing it consistently. Understanding this isn't about making excuses for their behavior. It's about seeing the dynamics clearly so you don't lose yourself in the process. You're not responsible for fixing them, and your worth isn't determined by how much distance they create or how often they return. The emotional takeaway is simple but powerful. You can care for someone without sacrificing your own stability, recognize the signs, honor your feelings, and set boundaries that protect your heart. When you stop chasing and start observing, you begin to see patterns for what they are, not personal failures, but reflections of their attachment style. Ultimately, being aware of these dynamics gives you freedom. You can choose love that uplifts you, or step away with clarity and peace. Either way, understanding the avoidant endgame puts the power back in your hands